Yes, that's right. It's sort of part of our brief in a way. I see it as really trying to discourage people from just thinking of it as a tick box exercise. Macquarie, we've had huge change in the last couple of years. We've had an enormous great curriculum review project going on. And so people just did not need lots of different layers added onto it if we could work out some strategies to get them to think about it sort of in a sort of an integrated approach. And just following on from your comment, Jeff, about making sense to the students, again, another one of the really happy timing incidents for me was that I happened to be on the sideline of my son's soccer match one day last year. And one of the mothers, she knew that I was teaching at Macquarie, and she said that she came out, she graduated having done a teaching degree in the 80s, but she made the comment that she never actually went teaching. And I just sort of flippantly said, oh, well, why not? You know, what happened? Did you go overseas travelling or do something else? And she said, no, I came out of my degree, my 4-year teaching degree, and I never really felt equipped to go into the classroom and teach. So I felt like I knew lots of stuff, but it was all a little bit like a bunch of helium balloons. And I never really knew how to tie all of that together and go in and manage my own classroom. She was going to be a primary teacher. And it was just a perfect little anecdote about one student's perspective on this lack of integration that she'd had as part of her degree. So that was another real spark for me to make me think, in my role in this academic development area, what can I do to just try and help the academics think about integrating what they do. Now, I just every now and again get some echo. Maybe it's somebody has some sort of like their speaker is capturing the mic, something like that. But just if I get a bit distracted, it's because occasionally I get an echo coming through. Yes, I agree, Jeff. It's a bit sad. That's right. It's sort of one of those things where you think, I suppose in some ways it's just, if people just keep having these things piled upon them, they don't necessarily think about the importance of combining them. But it's the opportunity to integrate, which Capstone units have this great opportunity to do. So, unless there's another comment, or Ursula, would you like to make a comment?
Hold it down to talk to her. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. That's great.
Okay. Yes, I was going to follow on from what Jeff said, and also what you said, that the assessment process then, of course, needs to have criteria built in that the students actually see as criteria so that they know what they're learning. I think that one of the things that you were describing there was that students weren't even aware, or the student wasn't aware of what they had learned to the point where they would feel confident about it. And of course, it goes much earlier than that too, during the time that they are being assessed, to actually see those criteria, including things like the problem solving and the teamwork and all those other graduate qualities that you mentioned.
That's exactly right. I nearly forgot to press the talk button down myself. Yes, it's the making those things very transparent to students. And the other part of that is taking out a little bit of space so that they have, 5 minutes to think about how these things fit together, rather than a constant quest to absorb more new information. And that's a difficult challenge when people love their subject. They don't necessarily want to free up that space to support the student with a little bit of scaffolding around how to integrate those ideas. So any other comments before we move on to just thinking about a Capstone unit in more specific detail? Okay, well, I've got my talk clock back on, and I'll just go on to these characteristics of Capstone units. Now, I should say that in our Learning and Teaching Centre website on Macquarie Uni, I've got a link right at the end that you'll see, but all of these, there's loads of information up there. we had Associate Professor Jan Arell coming in to initiate what we called at the time an assessment toolkit. And she started working on that a couple of years ago, and she included things like assessing capstone units or final year units, as well as lots of other things. And we've just been building on that ever since, the team here at Macquarie. So if you are interested in these things, I'm just going through quite briefly this background stuff about capstone. But there's a lot of information there, and it's all just freely available. The link, as I said, is at the end of the presentation. But you can go in and just have a look around and see what people are doing and see. You might be able to adapt some of these for your own sort of context. But I'll just give you a very brief overview of the kinds of resources we have around the thinking around these capstone units. So I guess if we think, I probably should have said earlier on, a capstone unit, I like that visual idea of the last little piece that goes in. If you were going to be building an arch, for instance, there'd be one nice little piece of masonry that just went into the top that helps the two sides of the arch join together. And that's really what a capstone unit or the focus of a final year unit could be. It has this great opportunity to provide a little bit of scaffolding around how all the major components of the course material fit together. So say I've been studying ancient history or Shakespearean literature or whatever it is, the sort of the eating habits of some reptile in a swamp in Darwin, or, you know, whatever the topic is, there will be lots of course material that I may not have had the opportunity to think about how it fits together. So sort of building bridges in between those components that in first year when I did reptile habitats, there were some things I learned in that unit that might link to something I did in second year and that might link to some problem I'm trying to solve in third year. You know, that integrated approach. And then here's our introduction of graduate capability, the notion of reflecting on whether they have learned some of these skills about problem solving or critical thinking. And hopefully, if we take a program-wide approach, we might have had a little bit of a scaffolded approach all the way through. So for instance, if we think about graduate capability, it's very hard for the one unit right at the end of the program to introduce right at the beginning the notion of graduate, say group work, and then have some assessment to demonstrate whether students can do some big project in a group. So what's really ideal is if the first year units could do something like introduce something that the students do in pairs, so they can kind of meet somebody that they haven't met before because they're only in first year and they'd like to get to know someone else. And then they have a very sort of low threatening opportunity to at least communicate with someone else. And then that can be a little bit of an introduction to this process that might continue all the way through the program until in their final year, they're doing something that does involve a team with a bit more complexity. So the notion of these graduate capabilities and the reflection on the development of them, hopefully not wholly within that one unit. I can see that Matthew's put up our link, so yeah, that's great. You can certainly go in there and have a look around.